This could either go really, really well or really freaking badly. Hey everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, This Story Ain't Over. Today's video is one that I'm so freaking hyped for because it involves someone that I really, really admire. So as you can probably tell from the title of this video, today I'm going to be reading a book recommendation from Cindy, the goddess herself. She is another booktuber, YouTuber. Her channel is called With Cindy, and she has been dazzling us for the past few years, and I've been a fan of Cindy since the beginning of her channel. I remember her just making waves in the book community and also just on YouTube in general, and I just love how her channel has expanded and all the different types of content that she brings to YouTube. So you may be wondering, where the hell did this all come about? So I'm gonna tell you. So for 2023, one of my biggest goals, which I mentioned in my Notion video where I talked about my 2023 reading goals, one of my biggest goals is to expand my reading even further than I did in 2022. In 2022, I discovered a lot of books from genres that I didn't usually pick up, specifically literary fiction, and I fell in love with so many of those books. I had been a very firm, mostly YA reader for years, and last year was like the pivotal point when I actually dipped way further into the adult category. So for 2023, one of my major objectives is to see where I can push my reading taste even further. And so that is where this video and a whole year-long experiment comes into play. So for every month of this year, I've picked one booktuber slash YouTuber who talks about books and asked them to give me a book recommendation. And I asked them to just like give me one that they think is great. It doesn't necessarily have to, you know, please me specifically, but I've just asked them to give me one book rec and film a video telling me why they think I should read it. Now I'm gonna show you Cindy's video in a second, but one other element to this video and this entire series that I have not told any of the booktubers is that I'm also going to be reading a few other books that are their favorites that they've mentioned in other videos on their channel. The reason I'm doing this is because I feel like there's a difference between a book that you recommend because you know someone's going to be doing a reading experiment on it versus books that I may think I'm interested in based off of their video and based off of my own personal taste and my own TBR. So a lot of the books that I'm picking are ones that are either on my TBR or just ones that seem like they would be new favorites for me. But again, part of the objective of these videos is to make sure that I'm expanding my reading taste, so I'm trying to make sure that I'm reading books outside of the genres that I usually pick up and books that I may not necessarily have picked up in any other situation, and I'm gonna see if I like them. Now, many of you may remember I did a reading booktuber's favorite books of 2022 video earlier this month, and originally all the people on this video series over the next year were people that I wanted to read their 2022 favorites from, but all of them decided to post their 2022 favorites videos late. So I'm gonna be factoring in some of their 2022 favorites, some of their all-time favorites. I'm just gonna be looking through different videos. So Cindy is the first one, and I decided to just go through her 2022 favorites video, and I picked out a few books on there that I think I'll enjoy and that I think will expand my reading taste a little bit more, but also were ones that I could find through the library, through a subscription service that I have for audiobooks and anything like that. So every book I'm reading in this video is going to be digital actually, because I feel like that's an element of Cindy's channel. She's always been very open about the fact that she doesn't own a lot of books, and she tries not to own a lot of books because she is a very nomadic person. She moves around a lot and does a lot of traveling, and it's also just like a lot of things that you don't necessarily need to have. Although I'm someone who loves to collect books, I do understand the consumerism behind it and the impact on the environment and how it creates a lot of clutter, and you know, it is constantly on my mind about what's gonna happen to my books when I die, but here we are. So I'm excited to also be reading digitally for this entire video. Now, over the course of this video, I'm also gonna be manifesting Cindy in other ways that I can. I'm gonna try to do most of the vlog without makeup on because I feel like Cindy is just very real with us all the time, and I love that energy, so I wanna keep it real with you guys. And I'm also gonna try and get more footage of me out and about. I have a few exciting things coming up for me this next week, so it should be a lot of fun for you guys to come along for. Okay, so with all that said, I'm gonna introduce the book rec that Cindy gave me, and then for the other books on this video, you'll just see them as they come up, and I'm gonna insert a clip of Cindy just chatting about her thoughts on it in her 2022 favorites video. Okay, so here we have Cindy's book rec for this video.
Hey Jananie, thank you for taking me out to do this special vlog. I have a great book that I read this past year that I would love for you to read and I would love to hear your thoughts on. That is House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. This is a contemporary young adult, which I usually don't read, but the vibes were so good for this book. I loved the descriptive writing. It was like very spooky and atmospheric and kind of like a little bit gross, but like in an aesthetically pleasing way. You'll know what I mean when you read the book. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it. I think it was done so well. And it's a standalone novel too. So it's short and sweet. And I really hope that you enjoy the vibes. So yeah, enjoy.
Oh my God, I love this. Okay, so Cindy's book rec is House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. And just first thoughts off that video, my initial reaction honestly is just, I honestly haven't been enjoying YA books all that much, so it's just funny that she recommended a YA book because I'm trying to read more books that are not YA, but like she says in the video, you know, she feels like it was different and she also doesn't usually pick up YA all that often, so I feel like in that way we have similar-ish tastes now, like in my new taste. But I'm intrigued by the fact that she's talking about the vibes and how this is a little creepy, a little like kind of horrific it seems like, and I'm just interested to see what I'm gonna think of that. I'm excited that she thinks like it doesn't feel like a regular young adult book, and I do recall other booktubers talking about this book when it first came out. I think it was last year. And I remember a lot of people saying that they really enjoyed it, but honestly to me, like there wasn't much based off the concept that drew me to it. All I really knew is that it's like slightly in the horror genre or speculative genre, but it's more of like a contemporary. Based off of Cindy's endorsement of this, I'm like, okay, maybe I will enjoy this. I do know that this book was also on her 2022 favorites video, so it's definitely like a huge favorite for her for 2022. Another thing that intrigues me is that she was saying how it's a little bit like gross, but in an aesthetically pleasing way, which is so interesting, and I'm curious to see what I'm gonna think of that. But overall, I'm honestly not sure how this one's gonna go. It could either go really well or really badly, and I'm excited to see what happens. With all that said, I hope you guys will be excited to join along for this journey, and let's get into the vlog. Hello friends, so it is Friday, January 20th, and I just finished work, and I decided I would start reading House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland, and I'm reading it on my Kobo e-reader, my Libra 2, which is just gorgeous, by the way. But yeah, I've started the book. I read the prologue and the first chapter, and I just want to turn on the camera to like give you my first initial thoughts, because honestly, I went into this kind of wary. As you guys know, I haven't really been enjoying YA books all that much recently, but when Cindy said that this one felt a little bit different from a lot of YA that she'd been reading and different from a lot of YA contemporaries that she'd been reading, I got excited. And already off the bat, having read the prologue and the first chapter, I can already tell that this feels a little bit different tone-wise. Although the characters are still pretty young, the main character I feel like is the only person who's actually a teen. Everyone else is a little bit older, including her sisters. And basically this is a story about like three sisters, it seems like. So there's Gray, Vivi, and then Iris, I think, is the main character who's narrating. And so far I don't know too much, but it appears that there's some sort of speculative element going on in this book, and strange things always happen around the two older sisters, which also affects the main character sister, Iris. And something about this is just really interesting to me. The author, I think, is British, because like all the characters are British, and I didn't expect that also, and the audiobook is like a narrator with a British accent. I'm not loving the audiobook, so I'm just mainly reading on my e-reader, but it appears that the two older sisters, Gray and Vivi, have these eccentric jobs, and they both dropped out of school early. So Gray is like a fashion designer, it seems like, and then Vivi is a musician, and they're both coming home at the beginning of the first chapter, and it seems like the main character is sort of shaken up by that. But what I found interesting about the main character is that she says this whole thing. So she describes herself as finding herself alone, the only hollow left, still struggling to thrive in the long shadows they left behind, so her sisters left behind. The quiet, bright one who loved science and geography and had a natural flair for mathematics. The one who wanted desperately, above all else, to be unremarkable. I found that interesting that the main character is one who wants to remain unremarkable, and it's giving me a lot of like Gatsby vibes, or like all of those books that have this like trope of like the main narrator being this like very normal person who's just perceiving these very eccentric or strange or amazing people. And I'm curious to see how the rest of this goes. But yeah, these are just my initial thoughts on the book based off of those first couple chapters. Already I'm liking the writing, I'm liking the voice, and it already doesn't feel too much like a YA, so I feel like this might actually go well. I am interested to see how some of these speculative elements come into play, or if there are even speculative elements. I'm really confused about that part, and I honestly just didn't want to read up too much about this book before getting into it because I just want it all to be a surprise. But I do think it would be interesting if there are speculative elements to it, but I like that it's like a real world story with some other things going on. Hello friends, it's a new day. It is Sunday, January 22nd, and it's about 6:30 p.m. right now. I am about 7.5 chapters into House of Hollow, so I'm a decent way through. This is like my progress bar on my e-reader, if you can even see that. I had a decently busy day today. I had a live show with my channel members today, which was actually a lot of fun, and I got a lot of reading done during that time. Unfortunately, I was not reading this book. I was reading a different book for my TBR for the month, but that book is going great, and I was just having so much fun chatting about it with my channel members. So if you're interested in becoming one of my channel members, we do these live shows where we just like hang out on the weekend. We do some reading sprints and we just chit chat about what we're reading and what's coming up for the week for us. And so far I'm really enjoying them. So I'm definitely planning to do more of those in the coming months. And there's a lot of other perks that you can get if you're a channel member. Right now, I'm very tired, if you can't tell. I washed up my makeup for the day and I am like settling in for the night so that I can try to finish this book. I am at a point in the book where it's starting to like ramp up in curiosity. I've gotten to the point where they've like revealed the title of the book and like why it's there. And we just got a drop of some information and some more details about their mysterious disappearance when they were children. And I am liking this. I am loving how spooky this is and how there's just creepy things going on. And I love, as Cindy said, like a lot of the imagery is kind of like creepy and kind of gross. And I'm sure it's gonna get worse. But so far I'm really enjoying this. I don't think it's by any means a favorite right now, and it's definitely not wowing me, but it's still really enjoyable, which is all I can really ask for. But I do have high hopes that it has the potential to become a new favorite depending on how the rest of the book goes. One thing I am relating to really hard with this book is that it's told from perspective of the third sister, the youngest sister named Iris, and I actually have two older sisters as well, and I am the youngest in my family. And it's just funny seeing some of the stuff that comes up and how Iris talks about their dynamic and how she feels as like the youngest and that kind of thing, and how much she looks up to her sisters and that kind of thing. And there's just some lines that really resonated with me because like Iris talks about how she's like the last one left with their mom, and she has this complicated relationship with her mother because she's like kind of controlling and all of that, and Iris feels like responsible for her mother. And it's just like interesting because like when you're the youngest child in a family, you feel this like pressure, at least in my case, you feel this pressure to sort of like be responsible for your parents because you're the last one left with them, whereas like your older siblings have like moved away and gone off. Obviously my family is not as fucked up as like this family in this book, but there are like similarities to the experience that like Iris has as a youngest child to how I feel as the youngest child. So that's just interesting and something like I related to. And so far I'm just like really enjoying this. Like I like the writing style, I like the characters so far, I like that each of the sisters is so vivid, and I'm so intrigued by this mystery of like why Gray is missing. So I'm sure we're gonna learn more very soon. Hello friends, it is a new day. It is Monday, January 23rd. I'm very tired. It is like 8 a.m. as usual. I have zero will to live when it's like a work morning, but it's fine. We're here today. I'm gonna start working a little bit and I'm gonna grab some breakfast as well. But before that, I wanted to tell you my final thoughts on House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. There was a lot of emotions while reading this book, and I feel like it took me in a direction that I didn't expect, and I honestly just loved it. This book honestly was so great, and I understand why Cindy recommended it. A lot of the vibes that she talked about were very much present in the book. I would also say it has this like fairy tale-ish aspect or vibe to it that was just a lot of fun, and there's definitely a lot of spooky bits to it that just made it for a great like nighttime read. As I said in previous clips, I absolutely love the sister dynamic and the way that they're willing to protect each other, and that really manifests when we get to some of the reveals about Gray. And I really enjoyed all of the reveals, even though I kind of saw most of them coming, especially like the big one towards the end because it's like foreshadowed throughout the book. I don't think I was like majorly surprised or anything, but it was very creepy and disturbing by the end, and I think that's part of the book's charm, and it made for a really like compelling read. Aside from the sisters, another character that I really loved was Tyler Yang. He's like this other fashion designer. He was Gray's ex-boyfriend, and we learn a lot more about him as we go along, and I think he was such a great character and so funny. And there were parts of the book where he just had these really funny one-liners, and I was just all over them. I loved it. There was quite a few of them that happened within the same couple chapters, and I just found them hilarious. So Tyler says, "God," Tyler said as he crawled away from his vomit and collapsed onto his back in the grass. "Dorothy and Alice and the Pevensie children didn't suffer like this." And then another one is, "I can see your terrible taste in clothing hasn't changed in over a decade," was Tyler's contribution to the discovery. And then another one, "Can I leave you behind if you die, or do you expect me to be heroic and drag your corpse home?" Tyler asked. And it was just funny. I just really liked him as a character. I think he was like really dynamic, very unique, and he was just like a fun character to follow as well, especially because like the other sisters are quite serious, very intense about everything, even though they have their jokes between each other, but Tyler was just like this fun element to the story. So overall, he was definitely my favorite character. There were parts later in the book where I was very upset with some of the decisions that happened in the book, but it kind of got redeemed at the end. So I was like, okay, I'm not super angry with this now, but it was just an interesting development, and I think it added some more stakes to the whole situation. But overall, this was a really fun read. I really enjoyed the vibes. I understand why Cindy recommended it as well, and I do think it's one of the better YAs I've read in a long time. So I enjoyed all those aspects, and the writing style was beautiful. I did end up picking up the audiobook again to help me finish the rest of the book, and that ended up actually being helpful. I think initially I just didn't like it for some reason, but when I picked it up again, I liked it a lot more, and I was just following along on my e-reader. I don't think I would rate this a 5 stars though. I don't think it wowed me in a major way, and it didn't hit me like deep in my soul, but it was still really enjoyable, and like one I would definitely recommend to a lot of people. So I think this one sits at like a solid 4 stars for me, which I think is a total success. I'm really excited with this book rec, and now I'm really excited to see what I think of the rest of the books on this video.
On a more positive note, the next book on my list is How to Keep House While Drowning. This is a very short self-help book that came for my neck. Self-help books are notorious for not being actually that helpful, but I will say this is a very helpful book in the sense that it has made me question my relationship with productivity. The book is specifically talking about cleaning and organizing around your space, but I feel like it was so much more than that, because it was more so sharing these life principles that are supposed to revolutionize how you approach home care, but it made me rethink how I approach productivity in general. I didn't use this book as a guide to clean up my space because I haven't lived anywhere permanently in a while. I've been constantly moving, but I kind of felt like it was a good therapy book for me, especially when it pointed out that I view rest as a reward. It literally said that I was a reader who was probably struggling with the idea of rest, and even when I am resting, I feel restless because I keep on thinking about all the things that I could be doing instead. And that was me to a fucking T. It truly made me evaluate my relationship with productivity because I put so much of my work into it. Like if I'm not productive, then I feel like a piece of shit. And it made me realize that I burn out a lot.
Hello friends, I'm getting ready for the day. It is like 5:45 in the morning. I have work very early today, so you know, and I have to go into the office, so I have to like commute downtown and all that. So I'm getting ready super early, and while I do this, I want to talk a little bit about How to Keep House While Drowning, which I actually just read last night on audiobook and zipped through the whole thing all in one night. It's not a very long book. It's only a couple hours on audiobook if you listen at double speed, which is what I do. I was kind of skeptical of the book going into it. It's a self-help book, as Cindy said, and a lot of those can be not very helpful. It's also like a very short book, so I was like skeptical of how much value she could convey in that small amount of words. And it was also written by a TikToker, which I didn't know going into it, but I researched her a little bit more and I looked her up, and having listened to the book, I realized that like her TikTok gave her a lot of like firsthand experience with other moms who were struggling with a lot of the same issues. But basically the premise of the book is just like giving you tips and like ways to deal with your care work or housework in a meaningful way, and trying to remember that you shouldn't assign any morality to those tasks and to that work. And it was such an interesting book because I think she does offer some, like, you know, fast tips and like little hacks to get you through, but she also offers like a whole mindset, I think, that was just so fascinating. And like, honestly, I was listening to the book in bed and it was the most calming thing ever, just listening to her voice telling me that I am worthy and that I am worthy of rest, and that, you know, there's no morality assigned to the fact that like I don't put my laundry away on the regular. I don't know, something about it just like hit me. At the end of the book, I was just like, that was amazing. And honestly, like, if I had to rate it, it's like definitely a 4.5 stars at least. I loved it a lot, and just like the whole book felt like an affirmation, I feel like. And she is pretty good at like acknowledging her privilege and also talking about the limitations of a lot of people's lives, like whether you have kids or not, whether you have the luxury of rest or not. And another thing I like that she talks about a lot is mental health, and how cleanliness and messiness in your house can really affect your mental health, but on the flip side also your mental health and also like your neurodivergence can also affect your cleanliness of your house or the messiness of your house. And she talks about how like she was going through postpartum depression and that affected a lot of the ways that she cleaned her house. The entire thing just got me thinking about like my own relationship with work and with care work. One of the things that I struggle with is like cleaning this bedroom a lot of the times, and I feel guilty about it all the time. And I come home, like if I go out for work or I go out in general, I come home and I feel like guilty about the fact that I haven't cleaned it. But then a lot of that times, like, I'm spending the time that I'm not cleaning, like working on YouTube stuff. And I think the fact that she was talking about like not assigning morality to these tasks was just really like nice and like eye-opening, because I think we're just so used to like people in our lives telling us that like if you're not clean, like that's bad and that you don't have it all together. And we are obsessed with this idea of like, oh, you know, if my space is messy, then like I don't have it together kind of thing. One of the things I know that Cindy really vibed with was like how she just talked about our relationship with work in general. And I think that's something that also like really vibed with me and like hit me, because like Cindy, I am a total workaholic, and I think I would spend like, you know, a full day, more than a day, like 16 hours working or something between my full-time job and then, you know, YouTube stuff. And then I would feel exhausted afterwards, but like I would still feel like, oh, I need to work. And then like anytime I slept in or something, I'd feel so guilty about it, because I'm like, oh, I could have woken up early and gotten some work done, or I could have gotten some filming done. And I think the pandemic really messed up my sleep schedule and also like my relationship with like, you know, constantly working, because I think back when I used to go downtown every day for work and then do YouTube work on the weekends and that kind of thing, when I got home from work, I at least felt the, you know, grace to like come home and like rest for a little bit, because I was so tired, physically tired from being out in the day. But I feel like now that I work from home most days, I am trapped by this thought that like, because I'm not going out for work, because, you know, I'm just sitting at my desk and it's not hard work technically, then I can continue working for hours on end in the evening. And like yesterday was one of those days where I was like, okay, I need to like get this thing done and then that thing done, and like, you know, after work, and I need to read this book and whatever. And then I had like this crick in my neck, and it just made everything so hard to do. And I was literally like, at 5 p.m. I logged off from work, and then I pulled up my personal laptop to work on YouTube stuff, and I started working, and then I couldn't do anything because I had reached that level of like burnout in the day that I was just so exhausted. And what I really needed was just like a break from all of my screens and just like, you know, to rest a little bit, and then maybe I could have came back to do stuff. But I didn't do that, and I kept trying to work through, and then the crick in my neck got worse, and then I just got irritable and annoyed, and then I ended up lying down with my audiobook, and then that just changed the game. I kind of fell asleep at first, and then I got up, did some YouTube planning, and I felt so much better because I had rested for at least a little bit. And then I had dinner after that, and then I came back here, and instead of going back to my table because I had more energy now and like listening to the rest of the audiobook, I just came back to bed and lied in bed and listened to this book, and it was just such a relaxing experience. And I think I have this struggle with reading in general, because it's related to my YouTube job, where it feels like work, whereas before it used to feel like just a fun thing to do and also a relaxing activity. And now I feel like this pressure, like, okay, I need to read this book and that book and whatever. And like, it's a pressure, but I also enjoy it. And so it's like this fine line. Like sometimes like it feels like rest and sometimes it feels like work. And it's hard to find that balance. Yesterday was just like a day. And I feel like listening to that audiobook just really helped. And I'm so glad that Cindy recommended it, because like honestly, like I was kind of hesitant to pick it up because of what it is. Like it's a self-help book and it was like about home care, and honestly, like I'm not a parent with like kids or anything, so like home care and like care work is like not the top of my mind, so I don't have the pressure that the author does in the book, where she has like 2 kids and like a partner. So yeah, it was really honestly a great read. Highly recommend it. And like I'm just so glad I read it, because I just love that she approach this issue from a place of grace and care, and thinking about how hard it might be for people to do care work. And I just love the language that she used and like the inclusivity, and it was just lovely, like honestly so lovely. And she also like talks about like in some parts like personal hygiene and how some people like struggle with that when they're going through tough times or dealing with some sort of mental illness or neurodivergence, and I just appreciated that a lot. It's just like so nice that she's like talking about it. And honestly, like while reading this book, I was like, oh my god, I know like 10 different people in my life who have struggled with this type of thing, like one of these types of things at some point in their life, and I think that they would appreciate this book as well. So yeah, definitely gonna be sending it around to everyone I know, because fantastic. I think there was just so much care, and it just felt like a hug. Like I said before, it felt like a hug, and I just felt so warm and fuzzy inside after reading this book, because I just felt way more hopeful and a lot less hopeless.
And then finally, the last book that is on my list is the book that actually is gonna be my top book of all time, and it is the book that made me cry on the subway. It is called What My Bones Know. It is a book that I have not talked about in a wrap-up video yet, because I read it more recently. It is a memoir written by a journalist who was diagnosed with complex PTSD. This book came from my fucking neck. This book hit me so hard, and it's definitely because I related to her so much. I think her hyper individuality and her drive for success, especially career success and financial success, as a way to kind of like fight back against all the other bad shit that happened in her life, all of that I found so relatable. But the thing that got to me, that made me cry on the subway, was not any of the terrible things that she talked about in the book. It was towards the end of the book when she talked about finally being happy. The parts where she talks about her finally feeling happiness, and there's just like the relief of it. After you've been through so much shit, I felt the relief along with her. And that's why I cried on the subway and even in this video.
Hello friends, it's a new day. It is currently Wednesday, January 25th. It's the morning. I'm just about to start work for the day, and I am exhausted because I had a really long day yesterday between going downtown for a work day and like having a really social day because it was like our company kickoff day. And then I also hung out with Elizabeth from Plant-Based Bride in the evening because she was in town for the week. So we went to this really cool bookstore called Rereading Used Books on Danforth, and it was the coolest place. It had like all of these geeky sci-fi things to it, which I loved, so I took a few clips. And then after that we got dinner together and we had Thai food, and it was just fantastic because we chatted about just like being on YouTube and being a YouTuber and like how that feels and like the different things that no one else understands about that particular experience. So it was a lot of fun, and it was just nice to get to know her in person because that was the first time we had ever met. But before that, on my train ride into the city in the morning at like 7 a.m. I started listening to What My Bones Know, and honestly I was hooked from the beginning on this memoir. Like Cindy says, this goes over some really difficult topics, and the author of the book and like, you know, the person who's talking about their experience, Stephanie, she goes through a lot of hard things. She went through child abuse, like very severe child abuse, and just like emotional abuse as well, and a lot of that sort of framed her career and who she was later on in her life. And she works in journalism, I believe. I am about, I want to say a third or a little less than a third into the book. So I listened to it in the morning. I listened to it a little bit on my train ride home very late in the evening, but I'm planning to listen to more of it tonight. I have a busy day today, a busy work day, and then I've got to go to the gym, get my nails done for the event that I'm doing later this week, and then hopefully I'll have some time after all of that to listen to the audiobook and just chill out. I might listen to the audiobook while I'm getting my nails done, whatever it is. But yeah, it's going really well so far, and I just like her writing style. I think it's reminding me a lot of I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, just the way that they both write and talk about their experiences in a little bit of a removed way, and like some of this dark humor. So I'm really liking this memoir so far, and I can already see like the broader implications of it, but I'm excited to see what else I think of it later on. But I can completely understand why Cindy cried on the subway while reading this book, because it goes through some very difficult things. But I think what is getting to me is like her coping mechanisms and the way that she throws herself into her work, and how she felt like she was constantly just like drowning and unable to make it through anything, even though she was still being super successful. One thing I really love that she talks about is the idea of resilience, and how people talk about resilience when they talk about people who have gone through these terrible hardships like her, but then they found success at the end of it. And so she talks about how what people really mean when they talk about resilience is actually success. They're talking about people who, you know, pulled up their bootstraps and like worked and got to this like fantastic ending or success. And they're not really talking about people who, you know, got through a really terrible hardship and then are just living life like a regular person. I think generally she's just trying to make this point that like people talk about resilience, but they aren't talking about like the very regular resilience of just getting through a regular day and like just getting through, you know, a very normal lifestyle. And they start ascribing resilience to like people who have made success out of very horrible circumstances. And it's like, no, that's kind of harmful to think of resilience that way, because I think it's resilient even if you have experienced terrible things, but then you are still making it work every day in a very regular sense. Like if you're just going to work, if you are just like getting through life, like that is still being resilient, because you have had life throw you so many curveballs and you are still going forward. And I think that's what's important. So I really loved that sort of discussion that she had in the book. I'm excited to see what I think of the rest of the book, but so far, like I can sense that this is going to be a 5-star read. Hello friends, it's a new day. It is Friday, January 27th. I am going to be doing my makeup over my lunch break before I head out in the evening for a very exciting opportunity. I am going to be interviewing Lily Singh for a YouTube event this evening, and I'm so excited. I'm so nervous. I have been just prepping over the past day, and yeah, I have a lot of things to do before I head out for the day, including doing my makeup. But I did want to talk about What My Bones Know, because guys, that book is so fantastic and I love it so much. So I literally have like 10 minutes left of the audiobook, but I've already like come to the realization that I love this book so much. It is definitely a 5-star read for me, and that is largely due to the fact that I love the way that she writes this book. Stephanie's memoir is just so fascinating because I think she really tackles the idea of her diagnosis and her mental illness, you know, her complex PTSD, from a place of wanting to know more and wanting to situate herself in a broader sort of context. And just seeing her sort of, you know, go to different professionals and try to figure out what's going on and try to get more information was just so amazing to me. And I loved the parts where she goes back to her hometown, to San Jose, and she realizes that a lot of other children around her were also getting abused and how they were dealing with it, you know, kind of by themselves. And it was honestly just so interesting and like so heartbreaking as well at so many moments in the book. And I honestly just felt for her so much. One of the parts that I really loved about the book was towards the last part of the book, where she starts seeing Dr. Ham, I think that's his name, and he is a psychotherapist, I believe, something like that. And basically they start doing these sessions and he lets her record their sessions so that, you know, maybe she can look back on them and that kind of thing. And so she has recordings of those sessions in the audiobook, and it's so interesting to hear them talk and talk about her perception of her feelings and of herself and, you know, the things that she's doing. And it was just so interesting. I don't know, something about just listening to those sessions was just so calming to me, because I was like, yeah, like I feel a lot of this. Yeah, I just loved it so much. I think there was just something so vulnerable about this entire memoir that just astounded me, and I loved it so much. There are so many parts to this book that like I can't even, you know, summarize properly right now, but I loved it so freaking much, and I understand why Cindy cried. And like honestly, there were so many points where I was like almost in tears, and I was just listening to it while like cleaning my room, and it was just such a great thing to be listening to. Like obviously there's like really hard things that go on in the book, but I think her determination towards, you know, healing and trying to figure out her body and her mind was just so inspiring, I think. And it's not a book that like tries to show this like romantic journey of her healing herself. It's just really like going through the nitty-gritty day-to-day, and how her mental health like ebbs and flows, and how her relationships with different people and with her parents specifically takes different turns. And I feel like she just did a really great job of, you know, conveying all that in the memoir. Anyways, I literally can't do my makeup while talking about this book because I just have so much to say, but I can't put it all together. It was just so fantastic, and I'm so glad that I read it. It's definitely up there with like one of the best memoirs I've ever read. And I love the title of the book, What My Bones Know, because I think one thing that I love that she does is that she connects the whole situation of like your mind and how it affects your body as well, but also how generational trauma can also affect you and your person, and you know, what you pass down to future generations as well. That was like a big part of the book, like her talking about generational trauma and like the physical and mental effects it can leave on you. It was just so interesting. Like I feel like I learned so much while listening to this, and honestly I want to go back and listen to it again with like the physical copy and like go highlight stuff that she talks about, because she researched so much stuff while doing this book, and I think it was just so interesting. So that is my, you know, overall feelings on What My Bones Know. Hello friends, so we have gone through 3 different books that Cindy has recommended in her favorites video of 2022. One of them was personally recommended by her, and the other 2 I picked from her video myself. And honestly, I feel like this experiment went so well. So of the 3 books that I read, which were House of Hollow, How to Keep House While Drowning, and then What My Bones Know, 2 of them I rated 5 stars, and funnily enough, it was the 2 that Cindy hadn't personally recommended to me that I ended up enjoying even more than the one that she recommended to me. So House of Hollow I gave 4 stars, How to Keep House While Drowning I gave 5 stars, and What My Bones Know I obviously gave 5 stars as well. I think objectively, House of Hollow is the book that basically anyone could enjoy if you're into speculative fiction, if you like slightly creepy things. But I feel like the other 2 books really hit both me and Cindy in a visceral way, because we both just felt a lot of the themes that were going on in both those books. They're both nonfiction. How to Keep House While Drowning is a self-help book kind of, and then What My Bones Know is a memoir. And you know, in How to Keep House While Drowning, I felt like I was being seen. I felt like I was finally given a moment to be like, okay, yeah, like these habits that I'm forming where I'm just constantly berating myself when I'm not getting rest is not really good for me. And then What My Bones Know, I think, was just so fascinating, but also such a study in mental health and also generational trauma. And I think anyone who comes from a diaspora background and who comes from a culture where verbal abuse and physical abuse in some situations is like very much not talked about and also just accepted as something that happens. Anyone who comes from those backgrounds, I think, can really relate to that book and really understand a lot of what Stephanie is saying. I think on a personal level, I really vibe with Cindy's videos because of the way that she talks about mental health and about how she can have everything but still feel really shitty about herself. And I feel like that's something I really connect to because I constantly feel that way as well. Even when things are going well, I have this like trauma response that something's gonna go wrong and that I'm gonna lose everything that I have. And I also just don't believe that I deserve any of it. And it's just this really complicated relationship that a lot of people have with happiness, and also just having grown up in situations where like a lot of things were bound to fall apart at any moment. Obviously I didn't go through anything as traumatic as Stephanie in What My Bones Know, but I think there's aspects of her experience that were very, very relatable to me that I was just like, oh my god, I feel like I'm reading about myself on page. And it was just such a deep and personal read, and I just loved every moment of it, even though it was very difficult at times. Even though I want to cry at a lot of points, it just hit me in so many ways. Overall, I feel like this experiment went really, really well. I really enjoy Cindy's taste in books, and I think we have a similar vibe, and I think especially when it comes to nonfiction, we have very, very similar tastes. I love that I've picked up a couple more nonfiction because of this video, because I think lately I've just been really feeling memoirs and like self-help books as well, so this was really great, and I do feel like I expanded my reading taste in a significant way. I found a YA that I actually enjoyed after a very long time, and it was definitely one that I didn't expect to like either. I had seen House of Hall around for a long time, but never thought it was the type of thing that I would like, so I'm so glad I enjoyed it. And then the other two were just so fantastic, and I think they were such meaningful reads for me. And you guys know that I did like a whole reading booktubers 2022 favorites video earlier in this month, and while I was doing that video I read so many books in like a single week. But while I was reading these books for Cindy's video, I took like a week and a half to read these 3 books, and I think there was something so nice about taking my time to read all of these books and just really connecting with the themes. I was busy in between, but it just really let all of the ideas of these books sink in for me, and I just really, really loved it. I apologize for how disjointed and chaotic this video was, but hopefully you enjoyed me taking you along for the journey. If you enjoy this type of video, if you want me to do more vlogs like this, let me know. I am gonna be making this a series for the rest of the year. So for every month of this year, I'll be testing another booktuber's recommendation and also some of their favorites, and it's gonna be a really great time. So definitely subscribe and follow for more of these videos. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Definitely let me know in the comments down below if you enjoyed any of the books that I read in this video and what you thought of them, or if you absolutely hated them, if you love or disagree with Cindy's taste, and I will see you guys in my next video. If you want to watch another video like this one, then definitely go check out my video from earlier in this month where I read booktuber's favorite books from 2022. I absolutely love chatting with you guys, so please remember that this story ain't over. Bye!